So I taught you a way. Oh, look who's here. I taught you a way to do this the other day that seemed to be pretty confusing for a lot of people. I actually taught you 2 ways, I think, in this class. We're going to learn a new one. And this seemed to work really well for 7th period. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and reteach it again, even though we already had the lesson on it. So we talked about these types of functions like this. This is a function right here, which just means we're trying to solve an equation. That's all a function really is. It's just a special kind of equation. The problem with this equation is inside this equation, we have an equation. We literally have an equation inside an equation. And that can get a little confusing. So we learned a way to solve it where we did this, where we said, okay, well, all this means is that the first answer, or I'm sorry, the second answer that I want, the final answer really in this case, the final answer is just dependent on the first answer, and then take that first answer and subtract 5. That's the way we learn it. That's what all this means. So the first answer is this. So that's going to be my first answer. So I'm going to solve out this equation right here. That's the equation that goes with the first answer. So I need to solve that first equation. And then once I solve that first equation and I get an answer, whatever that is, that'll equal something. And then once I solve that, I use the first answer right here to get the second answer. So the second answer is just going to be that first answer, subtract 5. I'm not even having you do anything today because we got to move forward. So please try to follow along because otherwise you're going to bother with this. Don't tune out. So for example, if I said solve G of 100, what's that mean? It means x equals 100. That's all this part means. I just changed the x to a 100. So this just means x equals 100. So I need to find the answer, the final answer, or the second answer. I need to find the final answer to the final equation when x equals 100. Well, in order to do that, I got to find the first answer, I said. So I said, okay, well, the first answer is based on the first equation. So this is my very first equation. It's the start of the problem. Write this down. F of x, the equation that goes with f of x. So this is the equation that goes with f of x. That's always where you start. That will never be the second equation or the third equation. You're always going to start with the f of x equation. Certainly when I create something, it's pretty much really any time. They're never going to switch the letters around with this type of topic. So the way I solve the first equation is I just say, well, if x equals 100, I know the first equation is 2 times x plus 3. This is an x variable, not a multiplication symbol. We don't use that in math, you know, hopefully know that by now. So I need to take 2 times 100, because we said x equals 100, that's what that means. And then plus 3. So my first answer is just 203. I just took the first equation, plugged in 100 for x, and I got my answer. So this is my first answer. Well, my second answer is just my first answer, and then I subtract 5 from it. So my second answer is just my first answer, subtract 5. So 198. So my second answer is 198 when, I guess the key thing to remember, I can't skip steps. When x equals 100. So again, over here, my second answer, G is the second answer, when x equals 100, was 198. All right, so now let's go back to the first page. Same kind of concept. I need to solve my first problem Because my second problem is, ignore this for right now. My first problem, my second problem, F is always first, G will be second in this case, there's no third. So my second answer is based on my first answer plus 9. I need to solve my first problem. So if we'll just do an easy one, G of 1. So the math's pretty easy. So G of 1 means what's the answer when X equals 1? Well, I always start with the first equation. If X is 1, 3 times 1 is 3. 3 subtract 2 is 1. So F of 1, I'll just write it all out, I guess. F of 1 is just 3 times 1 subtract 2 is 1. My second equation, so now I'm down to I did the first one, I'm down to the next one. Well, that's just the first one plus 9. So the first answer was 1 and then plus 9. So G of 1 is just 10. You were gone a really long time, and you tend to do that bathroom, so go, but you need to be back in like 3 or 4 minutes. Not your typical 10 or 15 minutes. No, you're gonna miss what you haven't seen in a long time. The second part, you know how to do the second part? Hold on, I'm gonna go. All right, so here's the only other thing I'm gonna add in. This is the new part that I did with 7th period, and they loved it. I said, well, tell you what, we know how to substitute, right? If I go into a store, let's say I have $1 in this pocket, like a dollar bill, and 4 quarters in this pocket, and I'm going to buy something. Does it matter which pocket I pick the money out of? This is $1, and this is $1, right? This one's 4 quarters, and this one's a dollar bill. It doesn't matter. They are the same exact thing. If I'm plugging in, or if I have an equation, and I tell you X equals 1, X is the same thing as 1. This equation is the same thing as saying, well, I could just put in 1 for X and get 4. X is the same thing as 1. They're both the same. Well, this is the same thing as that. They're the exact same thing, same value. So what we could have done, and this is the way I didn't teach it, I don't think, or at least I didn't emphasize it. I could have said, well, wait a minute. In this second equation that I've got, I've actually got f of x right here. But I know from the first equation, from right here, I know that f of x is the same thing as this. So it's kind of like the $1 and the 4 quarters thing. I could either keep f of x in there if I wanted to, or I could get rid of f of x and I could put in this, which is what I did. I just took the f of x out, and instead I put in the equation part, which was the 3x subtract 2 part. Now, if I ask you to solve g of 1, which I did, well, I think I did. Maybe I did. Now I am. All you do is you go straight to the last equation with the g, and you say, well, I know if it's g of 1, what does x equal? X is 1. That's what this is telling you. X equals 1. So I just go to that bottom equation and say 3 times 1, subtract 2, plus 9. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 subtract 2 is 1. 1 plus 9 is 10. Same thing we got when we did it before. So this way of using substitution, basically you're just getting rid of f of x and plugging in the equation that is the same thing as f of x. So now you have everything in one line. Now you just substitute in your number for x and you just do the math on that. So we didn't go over that last class. Now we have. So that's one way you can do it. You can do it if you understand. All I really need to do is just solve the first equation and then use that answer to solve the second equation. If you understand that, that's fine too. Both ways work. Here's the one you haven't seen in a long time. You have two questions on tables where you have to solve for the rate of change. We haven't done this in a while before break. I'm going to give you the very, very short version of it. This is the exact steps you will take to solve this. One of them is the table is exactly like this table. Virtually no difference. Except for the numbers are different. You need to find, when you have a table and you want to find the rate of change, step one, find two columns where you have an X value and a Y value. In this table, there's only two. You don't have any options. Sometimes the whole table may be completed and you can pick any two columns you want. Doesn't matter which two you pick. You only need two of them. So the first step, I'm going to zoom in on this as a matter of fact. This always messes up when I zoom in really, really far. I think that's part of the reason why I have problems with my smartboard sometimes. We'll see. All right, so step one, should have written this down because I don't have time to write everything I'm doing. Step one, pick two columns that have X and Y values. So I picked my two columns. If I had every column available because there were numbers in every box, I could still pick these two. I could pick two that are right next to each other if I have every box filled in. Now, I label them column 1 and column 2. Column 1 will always be the left column. Just like you would count left to right or read left to right, you label them left to right. So that's column 1, that's column 2. Here's the formula you need to write down. We did slope, remember, rate of change and slope are the same thing. We have done slope the entire class with rise over run. I just said even if you don't have a graph and they just give you like two ordered pairs, create a graph, like make a graph and draw a line. And then you can do rise over run. Now we're going to get into the formula I told you we would eventually get to. So this is the slope, or you could also call it rate of change. So that formula is for slope or rate of change. They're the same exact thing. And this is always the formula. That formula never changes for slope or rate of change. These little 2's and 1's, they're not math operations. They're not telling you to do any math. They're just telling you which column you're picking from. Am I picking from column 1 or column 2? So Y2 would be the Y value from column 2. Y1 would be the Y value from column 1. Now we just pick the number. I mean, we can do it in separate colors. So for Y2, I go to the Y values, which are on the bottom. I go to the second column. So that's my Y2 value right there. So I just write that down. Now I need to subtract my Y1 value. Well, that just means my Y value from my first column. So here's my first column, 2. And then I just keep doing that. My X2 value means the X value. Now these are on top, so now I'm coming to my top row. My X value from the second column is 17. And then last we have the X1 value. That means my X value from the first column, which is 4. And I get 10.4 divided by 13. Once I do the math. Now, what does this line mean in between all of those things? Divide. Good. Let me remember. So now, if this line means divide, that line always means divide. When you see it in algebra, that line means divide. That means you need to divide 10.4 by 13. So if you say 10.4 divided by 13, you get 0.8. So the rate of change, which is the most important part of the problem you're going to do, The rate of change is 0.8. The second part of the problem says, and complete the table. Now it says complete the table first, but you actually don't do the table first. You didn't need to because you had an X and a Y in both of those columns. If you didn't, then you would have had to have tried to complete the table. So now to complete the table, does everybody have that? I gotta get rid of it. All right. Yeah, I can get rid of everything. Whoop, maybe. See, it always does that when I zoom in. I don't understand why. There we go. So the way you complete the table, this is not the fastest way, but it's probably the easiest to understand. You need the X values to go up by 1 every time. So instead of just trying to figure out just this or just this or just this, just make a table that has all the numbers in it. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We won't have to go farther than that because we already have 17 and 12.4. So I know at 4, so these are my X's, these are my Y's. I know at 4 I was at 2. What do I go up by when I go to 5? Nope. Well, from 4 to 5 I do. I mean, what do I go up by on my Y value? Nope. 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 Say it again. 0.8. That's the definition. That's why we did the rate of change. The rate of change is every time X goes up by 1, how much does your Y change? Well, we just solved it out. It goes up by 0.8 every time. That's what the rate of change is. When X goes up by 1, I go up by 0.8. So that's 0.8, 2.8. Why does it do this? There we go. Maybe I think I just have to hold it down longer. Let's see if this works. So now when I go up to 6, yeah, that works. When I go up to 7, I'm kind of doing all the math for you because we're in a hurry. Normally I would make you do this. And 10.6. Oh, wait, I messed something up though. 3.6, 4.4, 5.2, 6, 6.8, 7.4, 7.4, 8.2, 9. Yeah, it's supposed to be 9.2, which I got last class. What did I do wrong? I got 4.4. I got that plus 0.8 is 5.2, and then 6, and 6.8, and 7.4, 8.2. Yeah, I don't know, I messed up somewhere. But anyway, that's the way you would do it. So apparently this should have just been, apparently that should have just been 9 even. Yeah, because then the next one would work. So now you just go in and you fill in the blank spots. So for 4.4, that should be 7. For 11, that should be 7.4. Which is not right. Oh, that's where I messed up. Here's where I actually messed up. So I was right. So then, I was right. I messed up on the math on that. So it should be 7.6 on the 11. But anyway, I mean, the concept is all you need to know. You just need to create a table. Every single X value goes up by 1, and then you just take the rate of change and you add it to every single number. Now you can go back, and so for 9.2, it should be 13. That's not going to be worth a lot of points. Filling the table in. You may want to do the rate of change because that is worth a lot of points. Then you may want to save filling in the table in for after you're done with everything. All right. So, oh, and then as far as graphing goes, there is a graphing question. Here's the super, super fast version. If you have an equation like this, function really. This is just like y equals mx plus b when we graph that. You have a y-intercept right there, so you put a point on the 1. That's your y-intercept. That's your starting point on the line. Now you need to figure out where's my second point. Well, to figure out your second point, you need to use that slope. And you just say, okay, well, my slope is 2, but I need to make that into a fraction because I need a rise and a run number. So rise over run. All right, well, my run number is 1, so I go 1 to the right. My rise number is 2, so I go up 2. That's my second point. And then you draw a line through those 2 points. So there are 2 graphing questions. That's all you do. Start the y-intercept, use the rise and run, and then go over and up, or over and down, or whatever you need to do. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, you have plenty of time.